Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks. Indira Gandhi National Open University School of Extension and Development Studies, SOEDS Bachelor of Arts, BAG Value Added Course. BEDSV101 Value Education. Block-4 Social Dynamics and Value Development. Unit-3 Values, Conflict and Resolution. 3.1 Introduction. A conflict can be with oneself or with the outside world. It may be with your friends, parents, spouse, siblings, helpers, politicians or the system. Conflict leads to stress, low morale and decreased output. In conflict, the bad values overpower the good values. Conflict makes an individual self-centered, selfish, egoistic, disrespectful, uncaring, arrogant and impatient. People use various tantrums to show conflicts, like anger, frowning, raising hands, use of abusive words, showing fists, kicking, beating and hitting. Human beings usually like to live a comfortable zone. If the comfortable zone of an individual is interrupted, then possibly conflict takes place. Each one of us has a comfortable zone, and a small disturbance in this zone can lead to big conflicts. This unit will briefly discuss the vital issues related to conflict. 3.2 Objectives. Once you go through this unit, you will be able to understand the meaning of conflict, analyze causes, forms of conflict, discuss ways to resolve conflict, discuss interaction vis-a-vis conflict, discuss effects of conflict. 3.3 Conflict. Conflict is a situation in which people, groups or countries are involved in a serious disagreement or argument. A conflict takes place because of opposing ideas, opinions, feelings or wishes. Conflicts occur at all levels of interaction, at work, among friends, within families, and between relationship partners. When conflict occurs, the relationship may be weakened or strengthened. Thus, conflict is a critical event in the course of a relationship. Conflict can cause resentment, hostility and perhaps the ending of the relationship. If it is handled well, however, conflict can be productive, leading to deeper understanding, mutual respect and closeness. Managing conflict is important if the relationship is to be long-lasting and rewarding. The wrist with a clenched fist is symbolic of what all happens in conflict. But what happens to our inner body? Do you know the reactions that happen in the body when we are having angry eyes, clenched fist, pounding heart, stomach knots and butterflies in the stomach? 3.3.1 Forms of conflict. The conflict occurs in various forms. It is depicted through clenched fist photo. Look at the screen. Activity. Recall one of your latest conflicts. Why the conflict began. How your mood was during the conflict and what was your reaction. Did you make efforts to resolve the conflict? Compare your mood swings before conflict, during conflict, and after conflict. Analyze in which situation you felt happy. It is quite important for you to do Activity I because the moment you rethink your conflict, you may come up with the resolutions. The phrase, to name it is to claim it, means that once a conflict is named, a solution can be claimed. An honest evaluation will help you to avoid new conflicts in future and be aware of the reasons/causes of old conflicts. There are many reasons to conflicts. Some of them are listed here. Let us analyze them. 3.3.2 Reasons of conflict. There are various reasons to conflict. Few of them are discussed below. A. Health reasons. We may react in an unpleasant manner when we are physically ill, tired, and hungry, suffering from headache or stomachache, stressed, in financial crisis. For many such reasons we react in unpleasant ways, resulting in conflict. B. Conflicting values. Different people have different values. Values are the beliefs which we hold dearly. We differ in opinion on important issues of child rearing, women's right, hunger, poverty, etc. These lead to conflicting values. C. Perception. Each one of us has varying standards of evaluation of situations. The world is what we perceive. Others may not agree with our perception, and this may be the reason for conflict. D. Socialization. We are born and brought up in different environments, so it is natural that we have different views. When there is difference, there is conflict. We have conflict because of the generation gap also. E. Expectations. A lot of expectation from others leads to conflict. Taking things for granted is one of the main causes of conflict among people. The parents taking children for granted, the husbands taking their wives for granted, the employer taking his employees for granted. Unreal expectation leads to frustration and gradually leads to conflict. Each one of us reacts to conflict differently. Conflicts have many shapes, size and forms. It can be as small as fight and as big as war. Conflict explains several aspects of our life. Conflict is normal and part of our life. It is not always a negative experience. We learn a lot from conflicts. We break and make relations and at times enter into new relations. We make lot of adjustments and usually avoid entering into new conflicts over and over. Different people react differently to conflict. Some react calmly while others explode. Some run away from the conflict while others come back fighting. Some want to negotiate the conflict while others keep proving their conflict. Let us do an activity to check our own reaction to conflict. Our reaction to conflict depends on our socialization. Do you remember the chapter on the processes of socialization in the previous pages? Knowingly or unknowing, our reaction to conflict will be similar to what we have learned in early and adult socialization phase of our life. 3.3.3 Levels of conflict. Conflict can occur at a number of levels of human functioning. There can be conflict in head between opposing motives or ideas, which takes place in the form of internal dialogue. This is called intrapersonal conflict. Beyond that, there is social conflict, i.e., conflict between people whether they are acting as individuals, as members of groups, or as representatives of organizations or nations. Interpersonal conflict occurs when two people have incompatible needs, goals, or approaches in their relationship. Important source of communication breakdown is the main reason of interpersonal conflict. Therefore, learning communication skills is valuable in preventing and resolving such difficulties. At the same time, personality conflict is another reason, and this refers to very strong differences in motives, values or styles in dealing with people that are not resolvable. For example, this is observable when both strong political parties contest for election and a power struggle ensues. Common tactics used in interpersonal power struggles include exaggerated use of rewards and punishments, deception and evasion, threats and emotional blackmail, and flattery or ingratiation. 2. Role conflict involves real differences in role definitions, expectations or responsibilities between individuals who are interdependent in a social system. Unfortunately, the conflict is often diagnosed as interpersonal conflict rather than role conflict, and resolution is then complicated and misdirected. The emotional intensity is often quite high in role conflict since people are directly involved as individuals and there is a strong tendency to personalize the conflict. 3. Intergroup conflict refers to conflict which takes the shape of ethnic or racial wars. Intergroup conflict is especially tense and prone to escalation and complex. When group identities are threatened, the costs of destructive intergroup conflict can be extremely high for a society in both economic and social terms. 4. International conflict occurs between states at the global level. Competition for resources certainly plays a part, but value and power conflict are often intertwined and sometimes predominate. The differences are articulated through the channels of diplomacy in a constant game of give and take, or threat and counter-threat, sometimes for the highest of stakes. Mechanisms of propaganda can lead to many of the same social psychological distortions that characterize interpersonal and intergroup conflict. 3.3.4 Value conflict. Value conflict refers to conflict or disagreement in values. Every society is divided on the basis of its stratification. There are several layers or strata in the society. We are distinguished from one another on basis of caste, class, religion, cultural background and physical features like skin and hair color. In no society do all such groups live together in complete harmony and equal sharing of social rewards. Instead, most of the groups are in conflict with each other to achieve the three scarce and precious social resources of the society: money B, power C, prestige. The task to achieve the above-mentioned three scarce resources is extremely difficult. Moreover, it creates conflict in the mind. The million-dollar question is whether these scarce resources are achieved with value-loaded means or by hook and crook. A man is very competitive by nature. It is believed that one can gain only when the opponent loses. Naturally, the result is lot of conflict in the family as well as the society. The value conflict situation takes an ugly turn because we tend to forget the delicacies of human relationship. Let us try to understand our relationship with an example of a rubber band. All of us know what a rubber band is. Please pick a rubber band in your hand. Now, with the help of your two fingers, taking help from both the hands, stretch the rubber band slowly. A point will come when the rubber band loses its elasticity and eventually breaks. Our relationship is just like the rubber band. You can stretch it, play with it, but don't break the relationship. The relationships are our strength, so let it remain with us. Here above sentences are contradictory in nature. It can be concluded that the sentences in the box are in conflict with each other. Even then, both the sentences are true in it and all the assertions are justified. 3.4 Value dilemma. Dilemma is a situation of uncertainty. In such situations we are confused and unable to take a decision. Since the chapter is on values, we would discuss value dilemma. Here, value dilemma is confined to define the confusions about values in our behavior. On number of occasions we are confused which value to inculcate and imbibe. Let us try to simplify the concept with a crossroad situation. Imagine a situation where we are standing on a crossroad and we are unable to make a decision on which road to move. This happens because we are unaware of the road. We are also confused which road would lead to our goal. Our mind is in conflict between roads A, B, C and D. In the same way, our life is a crossroad, where at every step, one has to consciously choose a path. Choosing a value-laden path is not an easy decision. There are lots of low omens. We need to be firm and strong to avoid being trapped in such situations. Only those persons who are very well socialized with good values will come out clean. Others will be in dilemma. Those who will be in dilemma will be in conflict within oneself and outside world. The conflicts arise because our society is highly stratified. This is the main reason for many of us to be in dilemma and leading to social evils like corruption, dowry deaths, bride burning, unwed mothers, female infanticide, child labor, domestic violence, unstable relations, divorce, to name a few of them. 3.5 Conflict management. Conflict management is an art and everyone must practice it. Conflict must be carefully dealt with. Unsolved conflicts lead to tension and stress in our lives. We argue with our spouses, friends, boss, clients, and the people we may help. Conflict is neither wrong nor right, we just need to handle it and manage it properly. Regardless of the level of conflict, there are differing approaches to deal with the incompatibilities that exist. Conflict can result in destructive outcomes or creative ones depending on the approach taken. If we can manage conflict creatively, we often find new solutions that are mutually satisfactory to both parties. Creative outcomes are more probable when the parties are interdependent, i.e., each having some degree of independence and autonomy from which to influence the other, rather than one party being primarily dependent on the other. Given interdependence, 3 general strategies have been identified that the parties may take toward dealing with their conflict: win-lose, lose-lose, and win-win. Blake, Shepard, and Morton, 1964. A. The win-lose approach is very common. People learn the behaviors of destructive conflict early in life. Competition, dominance, aggression, and defense permeate many of our social relationships from the family to the school playground. The fixed pie assumption is made, signifying that when one party gains, the other loses. The strategy is thus to force the other side to capitulate. Sometimes, this is done through socially acceptable mechanisms such as majority vote, the authority of the leader, or the determination of a judge. Sometimes, it involves secret strategies, threat, innuendo. Whatever works is acceptable, i.e., the ends justify the means. The valued outcome is to have one victorious and the other defeated, who prepares very carefully for the next round to win. In the long run, everyone loses. B. The lose-lose strategy is exemplified through compromise. Neither party is aware that by confronting the conflict fully and cooperatively they might have created a more satisfying solution. This approach is adopted realistically to make both the parties partially satisfied. C. The win-win approach is a conscious and systematic attempt to maximize the goals of both parties through collaborative problem solving. The conflict is seen as a problem to be solved rather than a war to be won. In this case, communication is open and direct rather than secretive and calculating. Threat and coercion are prescribed. The win-win approach requires a very high degree of patience and skill in human relations. Thus, if we work to understand and manage it effectively, we can improve the quality of our social relationships. 3.5.1 Conflict resolution. It is important to identify the ways from preventing conflict from happening in the first place. Once you find yourself in a conflicted situation with someone else, it is important to reduce the emotional charge from the situation so that you and the other person can deal with your differences on a rational level in resolving the conflict. Diffusion. We simply validate the other stance so that we can move on to a healthier resolution of the conflict. This may be hard to do in a volatile situation, but a sign of individual strength and integrity is the ability to postpone our immediate reactions in order to achieve positive goals. Sometimes it is wise to lose in order, ultimately, to win. 2. Empathy. Empathy as an important technique helps in giving the feedback that he or she is being heard. There are 2 forms of empathy. Thought empathy, that gives the message that you understand what the other is trying to say, and feeling empathy, which is the acknowledgement of how the other person probably feels. Exploration. It is to ask gentle, probing questions about what the other person is thinking and feeling and encourage the other to talk fully about what is on his or her mind. 3. Identification. It is necessary to have a discussion to understand both sides of the problem. Define the things that you both agree on, as well as the ideas that have caused the disagreement. It is important to listen actively to what the other is saying, use I statements, and avoid blame. 4. Brainstorming. This is an important phase, through which many ideas/points are generated and the shared ideas and interests are listed and discussed for The benefit of the mutual parties. V. Evaluation. In this process, one goes through the list of alternative solutions to the problem, consider the pros and cons of the remaining solutions until the list is narrowed down to one or two of the best ways of handling the problem. It is important for each person to be honest in this phase. The solutions might not be ideal for either person and may involve compromise. Y. Selection. Select the solution that seems mutually acceptable, even if it is not perfect for either party, as long as there is a mutual commitment to work with the decision. The conflict has a chance for resolution. 7. Implementation. It is important to agree on the details of what each party must do, who is responsible for implementing various parts of the agreement, and what to do in case the agreement starts to break down. As conflicts occur due to clash of ideas or values, we can very well bring out the remedies to avoid conflict. The remedies to avoid conflict are the good values that are required to be consciously practiced, such as forgiveness, understanding, cooperation, respect, empathy, patience, positive attitude, polite, courteous, consistency, obedient, disciplined, respect for age and gender, belief in just world. 3.5.2 Conflict Resolution Technique, CRT. Please take a paper and pencil. On the top of the paper, write the name of the conflict you want to resolve. Then divide the paper into two parts. It can be right and left or up and down. See the box A and B for division of page. We can choose either box A or B. Look at the screen on the right side or the upper part of the paper. Write the factors that are pulling you to avoid conflict. Similarly, on the left side or on the down part of the paper, write the factors that are pushing you into conflict. Analyze them and resolve your conflict. 3.6 Moral conflict. Moral conflict occurs when two groups have radically different ways of thinking or attitude towards human life. One group will be perceived by the other as evil or foolish. This is because an action that one moral order deems perfectly acceptable may be regarded as negative by the other group. If we take the issue of marriage, we find that traditionalists would see it as evil, harming their race or religion. Likewise, some traditional/religious groups find, for instance, wearing of Western dresses by women, freedom of movement, education, and/or public involvement as abominable attitudes, whereas in Western societies the freedom to wear what one wants and do what one wants is seen as a woman's right. This same is abhorrent to very traditional Muslim cultures. In short, the two groups have clashing conceptions of moral value. In many cases, culture has a powerful influence on the moral order. Different cultures develop different ideas about morality. For example, some cultures place great moral emphasis on the family, while others stress the importance of individual autonomy. To take for example, women with children are easily acceptable and given remarriage in certain tribal societies, whereas till today widow remarriage is still banned in certain conservative societies of Rajasthan and Haryana. These cultural differences become even more problematic when groups have radically different expectations about what is virtuous in India, what is right, and how to deal with moral conflicts. Thus, culture wars are often driven by moral conflicts. 3.6 Features of moral conflict. To further understand moral conflict and deal with it effectively, it is helpful to understand its common features. A. Misunderstanding. The first general feature is the tendency for each side to misunderstand the words and actions of the other. People from different traditions have trouble in communicating because they rely on different systems of meaning, norms of communication, and behavioral expectations. In India, to address elders by name is considered as disrespectful, whereas in Western countries elders are addressed by the first name. This is a source of misunderstanding. Ideas about fairness and images of justice can also vary among different groups. B. Mistrust. The second feature of moral conflict is that group members tend to develop feelings of mistrust and suspicion toward the other group, even a sense that the other group poses a danger to their very survival. The group's different conceptions of morality lead to misunderstanding, which in turn contributes to conflict escalation. C. Strained communication. Another feature of moral conflicts is the communication between the parties. The patterns of communication in moral conflicts that consist primarily in personal attacks, denunciations, and curses. In many cases, groups rely on rigidly held social or political beliefs, or ideology, to indicate why their position is morally superior. This is the reason that we observe that America is blaming Pakistan for encouraging terrorism and vice versa. D. Negative stereotyping. People in moral conflicts tend to invidiously categorize and denounce the personalities, intelligence, and social manners of those with whom they disagree. They attribute negative characteristics to those who violate their culture. Groups with radically different conceptions of morality at times feel offended by the actions or words of the other group and denounce those actions or the group as a whole. E. Non-negotiability. In case of non-negotiability, the ideological beliefs disallows the different groups to reach a common consensus. The groups may even get to the point that the goal of harming the other becomes more important than helping oneself. This is observed between the failure of dialogue between government and the different terrorist organizations. Thus, the effects of moral conflicts affect all the participants. The dehumanization of one's opponent that often occurs in moral conflict paves the way for hateful action and violence. It often leads to human rights violations or even attempts at genocide, as parties may come to believe that the capitulation or elimination of the other group is the only way to resolve the conflict. 3.6.2 Dealing with moral conflict. The following techniques may be consciously adopted to deal with moral conflicts. A. Changing the stories. One way in which people can change the pattern of conflict is by telling different stories about what they are doing. By using narratives and storytelling to communicate, they can enrich the views that each side has about the other, often revealing commonalities in the midst of all the differences. B. Reframing. Third parties can sometimes help the disputants to redefine or reframe their conflict, focusing more on attainable interests and less on non-negotiable positions or negative stereotypes. They can also help parties to seek mutually beneficial outcomes rather than competitive, win-lose outcomes. C. Dialogue. Similar to storytelling, dialogue is a process of in-depth communication that allows parties to get to know each other better and to find commonalities with the other side. It has been observed that due to the efforts of constant dialogues, the political differences among nations have lessened in the global arena in a constructive manner. They have thereby found a way to manage their conflicts. Activity. Can you recall an incident where you were successful in avoiding conflict? What values you use to avoid conflict? Narrate your conflict management skills. 3.7 Lesson on life. Conflict situations arise in everyday life. The story beautifully depicts a situation where a tough decision had to be taken. A dilemma remains, like which railway track one has to choose. Just discuss the story with your friends and try to understand the conflict prevailing in the story. Isn't it relevant in today's perspective? The reflection is marvelous. Let us try to follow in our life. Inspirational story. The right decision. A group of children were playing near two railway tracks, one still in use while the other disused. Only one child played on the disused track, the rest on the operational track. The train is coming, and you are just beside the track interchange. You can make the train change its course to the disused track and save most of the kids. However, that would also mean the lone child playing by the disused track would be sacrificed. Or would you rather let the train go its way? Most people might choose to divert the course of the train and sacrifice only one child. You might think the same way, I guess. Exactly. To save most of the children at the expense of only one child was rational decision most people would make, morally and emotionally. But, have you ever thought that the child choosing to play on the disused track had in fact made the right decision to play at a safe place? Nevertheless, He had to be sacrificed because of his ignorant friends who chose to play where the danger was. This kind of dilemma happens around us every day. In the office, community, in politics, and especially in a democratic society, the minority is often sacrificed for the interest of the majority, no matter how foolish or ignorant the majority are, and how far-sighted and knowledgeable the minority are. The child who chose not to play with the rest on the operational track was sidelined. And in the case he was sacrificed, no one would shed a tear for him. The great critic Leo Valsky-Julian, who told the story, said he would not try to change the course of the train because he believed that the kids playing on the operational track should have known very well that track was still in use, and that they should have run away if they heard the train's sirens. If the train was diverted, that lone child would definitely die because he never thought the train could come over to that track. Moreover, that track was not in use, probably because it was not safe. If the train was diverted to the track, we could put the lives of all passengers on board at stake. And in your attempt to save a few kids by sacrificing one child, you might end up sacrificing hundreds of people to save these few kids. While we are all aware that life is full of tough decisions that need to be made, we may not realize that hasty decisions may not always be the right one. Remember that what's right isn't always popular. And what's popular isn't always right. Everybody makes mistakes. That's why they put erasers on pencils. 3.8. Summary: conflict is disagreement, argument, disbelief, untrustworthy. Conflict leads to stress. There are various means suggested in the chapter where you can avoid conflict. Avoiding conflict is best done by conflict management and conflict resolution techniques. These techniques are applied with the help of good values consciously practiced by us in situations of crisis. For applying conflict resolution techniques, we need to learn skills of adjustment. The more we adjust, the less is the conflict. In the next chapter, we will understand the value of adjustment required for a peaceful life. Thank you for listening. We will be back with next chapter.